Welcome everybody to the World GT Championship Season 10.
Hello everybody and welcome to round number 6 of the World GT Championship, supported by 3M here on RaceSpotTV, and we have got an exciting endurance race coming up for you tonight. My name is Paul Smith, alongside me is Peter Mackay in the commentary booth, and Peter, a 1 hour 45 minute race around Spa-Francorchamps. A lot of these drivers will know this place like the back of their hands.
Well, you've got to be very consistent over that length of time, don't you, Paul? And Spa is the sort of place where it can bite. And here in the World GT Championship, track limits are something that we talk about. Well, it's already caught out a few drivers throughout the season, and at Spa, it feels like the two go hand in hand these days.
Absolutely it does, but we'll see how everybody gets on with this round of the championship. Of course, we are at Spa-Francorchamps, and there is the calendar. After tonight's race, we will be at the halfway point of the championship, and if we take a look at the map of the circuit here, I mean, where are the highlights of this track and the key points of this track?
Well, I always think with Spa, everywhere, really. It's just such a comprehensive circuit, such a comprehensive test of both car and driver. You come into turn 1, last source, very, very tight right-hander, always trouble there. Then hard on the power, down the hill towards the famous Eau Rouge and Radion. A bit of a notorious corner at the front at the moment, unfortunately. Then up the hill, up the Kemmel Straight towards Les Combes. You got the right, then left, then down towards Brussels, the Jackie X left-hander, and then the very, very tricky double left-hander of Pouhon. Then the Fagnes chicane, Stavelot campus, and then back on the power again, all the way up towards Blanchimont. Sir Jackie Stewart used to say, forget Eau Rouge, Blanchimont is the corner. Then into the bus stop. That's your last chance on the last lap to get the move done, and that is a lap of Spa-Francorchamps. A little bit shorter than it used to be, but still a fierce, fierce test.
It is a fierce test that these drivers will face themselves against, and well, let's have a look at how the championship is standing at the moment as we see the night conditions. The sun has set here, so it's going to be an intriguing race here today. But yeah, let's have a look at those championship standings. It's Ross McFarlane who leads this championship going into round number 6 ahead of Phil Dennis, with David Baker nicely placed there in 3rd place after a couple of good results last time out. Keik Schubert down there in 4th place with Josh Thompson, who thinks his championship is over. Well, I wouldn't write it off yet, Josh. Alex Neller, 6th place ahead of Matt Turnbull, Pete Harrod, Michael Avdoka and Oscar Koper, who had a couple of cracking races earlier on in the season. The Pro-Am standard is Mike Horder then, who leads that one ahead of Max Wolf. Chris van der Ness, 3rd place of the two Evo SR teammates, close together. Joint 3rd with Ben Gregory, 4th place, and then 5th place for Adam Hedgecock, not that far behind, 9 points behind. Christian Rose, 6th ahead of Brian Loynes. Simon Field, Mark Woodhouse, and Lars van Rijn. Your AM standings then, Ryan Hamilton, who leads that one by 10 points over Michael Blake, who's a further 5 points ahead of Andy Archer. Tom Stevens in 4th place ahead of Lee Berridge. Chris Byram, Paul Webster, Simon Neller, John Roberts and Bradley Hulls, who we were really impressed with last time out at Hockenheim, down in 10th place. And then the team standings come up right now. It's the 3M by Williams in XBS in 1st place. They're not that far ahead of Pure Sims Esports, with Pure Sims SimLab in 3rd place. The Craig Setup Shop outfit are in 4th ahead of BS Competition 5th, and RSR by G Performance are in 6th place. The first of your Pro-Am teams, Evo SR, with their very strong lineup there in 7th place ahead of Boosted Virage, only by 9 points. 3 Spires Motorsport then, and Boosted Motorsport round out the top 10. And then finally, we've got to mention this, the Enduro Cup here. Well, Ross McFarlane leads that after the first of the endurance races. These are all points scored in just the endurance championship, endurance rounds of the championship. Andy Archer with Billy Fletcher in 3rd place. So you can see how that's pretty close to start with, but we have only had one endurance round so far. So this is the second of the endurance rounds here today on the World GT Championship, and you can see the conditions that the driver's going to have to contend with, but also for the start of the race they'll have to contend with Eau Rouge and Radion as the first 2 corners here, Peter, because we are on the endurance pits here.
Oh, the proper Spa, in my view. Of course, the Spa 24 Hour, one of the most prestigious endurance races anywhere in the world. So Spa, very familiar with that sort of racing. And of course, well, the Spa 24 Hour this year, I think probably the move of the season. At the end of the year, when all of the highlights clips are usually collated together, the move that Alessandro Pierguidi put together in the Ferrari going around the outside of poor old Dries Van Tor, who was driving his socks off in the Audi, Dries Van Tor is one of the best GT drivers in the world, and then all of a sudden Alessandro goes round the outside and he probably looked across thinking, "You maniac!" But that is what we're gonna see today: endurance racing at Spa.
Unfortunately, we're not going to get changeable conditions here tonight. That's to come soon in iRacing. Not quite yet though, but it's going to be an intriguing race. It's nice and cool, so the tyres aren't really going to be an issue here. It's going to be all about fuel. 2 mandatory pit stops here. We have in the last 2 endurance rounds here in the World GT Championship, we've had a caution 50% of the time here as well on lap 1. So Eau Rouge Radion, that's usually where you have the big accident that causes the yellow flag to come out. Touch wood, it didn't happen last season.
Well, as I mentioned in the pre-show, Eau Rouge and Radion is a little bit of a notorious corner at the moment. A lot of discussion of what to do with it. It is a fearsome corner. It is such a challenge for the driver, particularly in a GT car, because they're coming through there so fast now. But of course, with it being tarmac runoff, a lot of the drivers saying, you can afford to take probably too much risk than you maybe should do. With the gravel trap, it might be a little bit better. But this is what we have for now. And if you get it wrong at Eau Rouge, it's scary. And the thing is, you don't have to be the one that gets it wrong. You're looking up almost skyward when you're coming up Eau Rouge. It's so steep. And when you come over the crest of the hill, sometimes you can find the road is completely blocked. So it's fearsome for a reason, isn't it?
Absolutely, and it took my breath away just how steep that section of the track is the first time I ever saw it. But we haven't got time to talk about that at the moment because we have got a starting grid to go through, and it's Kei Koshube who's on pole position, the king of endurance racers here in the World GT Championship, in 2nd place alongside him Ross McFarlane. Matthew Turnbull and Josh Thompson row number 2, with Jack Sedgwick and Kenneth Gould-Branson row number 3. Row 4 then for Elias Sepinen and Oscar Copa, and row 5 Jesse Jones and Michael Evdoka. Elliot Harper, the top of your Pro-Ams for the Luxim 24 Esports car, on row number 6, shared with David Baker. Row number 7 with Aaron Rose and Ashley Finch, with Joel Evans and Brian Lyons, and row number 8. Row 9 for Mike Horder and Ben Gregory. Row number 10 for Chris Wood and JB Masida, with Chris van der Ness, Lars van Rijn, Christian Rose and Tony Draper sharing rows 11 and 12. Row 13 for Simon Underhill and Simon Field. Lee Berridge, the top of your AM drivers, on row number 14 with Pete Harrod. Row 15 for Morgan Butler and Ross Nicholson. Row 16 for Ryan Hamilton and Paul Webster. Row 17 for Simon Ella and James Whitehouse. Andy Archer and Tim Perry share row number 18. Row 19 for Adam Hedgecock and Matt Woodhouse, with Max Wolf, Tom Stevens sharing the 20th row of the grid. Adam Gladden and John Robertson, row number 21. Row 22 for Chris Byram and Michael Blake, with Toby Ward and Nick Salapoutis sharing row number 23. Row number 24 has got Bradley Hulse there. There are a few drivers who didn't set qualifying times as well, so Ashley Sutton will share that row with Bradley Hulse. Alex Neller, Billy Fletcher, Jonathan Walker, Matt Bone and Nathan Lewis all at the back of the grid. So watch out for those drivers for the charge through here, Peter. And it's a track and a race distance where you can actually make that charge through.
It is. With endurance racing, you really have to keep yourself in the game for the end. They do not hand the points out right until the flag, so you've got to just keep yourself in it, especially in these dark conditions early on. The attrition rates will be high. This is where you just got to survive the opening stages of the race.
As the drivers now head on out. It's a short pace, a quarter of a lap, so to speak, around here. And they head on through towards the end of the lap, and Keiko Shube is doing everything he can to save fuel here. He's pretty much shutting off his engine and then putting the lights back on and having the engine go again. So they're doing everything they can to save some fuel. The green flag doesn't come until you come around La Source. You usually see your leader pull away out of La Source and down towards the first section of Eau Rouge and Radion. The start line is in the endurance pit. The finish line is on the Grand Prix pit. So a couple of things to keep an eye on there. Okay, Kashube, he's holding them. I'm surprised he hasn't gone straight away. Waiting patiently. Green flag is in the air. We go racing here in Spa-Francorchamps, and Josh Thompson is almost pushing Ross McFarlane up down towards Eau Rouge. Radion, cold tyres for the entirety of the grid. Kei Kashube, not the best of starts for him as they go up through Radion. And so far, so good. Nice and clean start for everybody out there. But it's Ross McFarlane to the front, but Josh Thompson now in that BMW, the superior top speed there to the front.
Brilliant move there from Josh Thompson, and I think he knew the importance there of getting in front of Ross McFarlane, because, whoa, Simon Neller has an off. There's a big crash then at Les Combes. And I wonder if that doesn't look so bad to cause a caution, only just a couple of cars involved. But yeah, Josh Thompson knew he couldn't let Ross McFarlane get away there, because in that Lamborghini he gets clear air to run. It's so good through the mid-speed corners, of which there are plenty at Spa. So really opportunist move there from Josh Thompson.
Oh, Joel Evans and the 193. That's Christian Rose, I believe it is. Gone off down there at the exit of Jackie X corner. So easy to do there, especially with colder tyres. And they have to find themselves a gap to be able to get back out there on track. But absolute nightmare start for a couple of drivers out there, as we saw Simon Neller and Toby Ward at Le Combes having their incidents up there. But the track wasn't blocked, so that's good. That means that we get to keep on racing here. And the front three are already trying to make a breakaway here at the start of the race. And Josh Thompson, I think he's saying, forget about fuel saving, I want to break the slipstream.
Yeah, I think as you can see, Josh Thompson is taking a lot of liberties with the track limits as well, but the drivers do get a certain number of track limits abuses and indeed incidents that they can have before being given a drive-through penalty. And I get the feeling, Paul, that Josh Thompson is really pushing on qualifying speed at the moment, maybe just running over just to try and break the back of the race and then control it later on. And of course, after a disastrous meeting last time out, I think he's wanting to get his head down and get into clean air early.
Yeah, I don't blame him. He wants to try and get out of trouble, just run out of dodge here, and let Ross McFarlane and Kei Kashube battle it out. And this is where Ross needs to be able to use that slipstream of the BMW in front of him now. Up the Kemmel Straight, and it is uphill. It's a very steep hill up here. You don't believe it until you see it. And David Baker dropping down a couple of positions after Eau Rouge Radion. He's got a slowdown penalty, so he's cut across the corner. Very easily done through Eau Rouge Radion. Have to serve that slowdown penalty, but he's back up underway, but dropping down to 17th. He won't be happy with that happening so early in the race.
No, if you're going to get a slowdown penalty for overly abusing track limits, it is really, really punishing at this stage when the field is so tightly packed together. So a lot of track position given away there, and well, that can change your strategy straight away, can't it, Paul? Because if you lose that many positions, you maybe think, okay, I'm just going to have to tuck in here and just take my medicine until the first pit stop.
So there are a number of corners where the track limits were changed around here on the last build of iRacing. We will get into that a little bit later on, but while the race is still in the early stages, that's Simon Field taking a trip across the grass there at Lavagna, getting back out onto track and rejoining safely, and that's a good thing to see, because too often, not just in sim racing but also in real life, you just see drivers determined, I need to get back onto the track, and cause a further accident.
I remember one particularly, a factory Ferrari driver doing that in a Risi Ferrari at Sebring and causing a huge accident. Funnily enough, he's not a factory Ferrari driver anymore. I can't remember his name actually. But yes, you're right. It is not just in sim racing that you see that. As Ross McFarlane, no messing about there from the Scotsman. 2 minutes 16.4, fastest lap of the race so far. And of course, in these dark conditions, although the visibility is not as good, the track conditions are just perfect for the tyres.
Yeah, well, not just for the tyres, but also the engine as well. The cooler air temperature will help give those engines just that little bit more grunt, that little bit more top speed, and that will help things out no matter, should I say. Up the Kemmel Straight we go for Kei Kashube, and if I'm Kei Kashube and Ross McFarlane, if you could stay in the slipstream, I'd be quite satisfied with that, really, if I were those two. Whereas this pack here, Jack Sedgwick, Turnbull, you've got Sepinen that we're on board with right now, they need to start picking up some lap time here, because they have dropped off that lead 3.
Well, it's Jack Sedgwick in the Ferrari, the number 10 car, who's 2 cars in front here. The Lamborghini in front, Matthew Turnbull, the 64, Elias Sepinen, the BMW, good start there as well. But you're right, Paul, trying to, if they let that leading trio get some more clean laps, well, they will just clear off into the distance. And at this very high level at the front of the field, there is no quarter given or taken, and the lap time's often separated by hundreds rather than tenths. So therefore, closing down a gap is very, very tricky. That was, of course, the story of Le Mans and GT Pro this year. Ferrari and Corvette so evenly matched that actually the gap stayed the same for hours on end.
Well, here's a look at what happened on lap 1 there. This is Simon Neller, and I think he just gets a little tap from behind, and then on his own, that was one of the three Spires cars, yes. So that would have been Toby Ward there. There's James Whitehouse as well. This is on lap 1. Going up the Kemmel Straight, and yeah, it wasn't James Whitehouse, he carried on, he was fine, but it was the 3 Spires car of Toby Ward. Now, Kev Branson also on lap 1 had a little bit of an outing, because he was up there in the top 6, he was pushing for position, and then just a little contact, a little rub by Matt Turnbull, and he goes off at Malmedy.
That is so typical of that section of the track with the right-left switchbacks. It's so easy to get involved into a little bit of argy-bargy, and this is what we were talking about, getting involved in incidents early on. It's so easy to do, and it's so important to avoid them. And oh, there's another one as well, unceremoniously helped off the road. There's Joel Evans, and oh, one of the Craig setup shop Porsches goes straight in after him.
That was Christian Rose, yeah.
Oh, so there's a lot of races completely ruined on lap 1 of an hour and 45-minute race, Paul.
Yeah, we've got 3 cars on pit road right now. Chris Byram, JB Maceda and Simon Neller out there in pit road. So they have had issues out there. There's Bradley Hulse working his way forward, it must be said, for him. He impressed us so much at the Hockenheimring last time out in the second race. Up 13 positions already, Peter. Up into 34th. Well, he's just about to lose a position here, and he's going 3 wide through Brussels, which is not normally what you see out there.
Well, I don't think you could fit a year 1 flip-flop through there, so don't try and fit a year 1 Porsche through there. There's not a gap, Bradley. You're good, but not that good, my friend. Oof, this is what endurance racing can sometimes be like. In these early laps, you think, guys, calm down, but it's almost the kind of push or be pushed kind of thing. Whereas if you are too passive, you can get freight trained. So, just shows you how competitive a field we have here in the World GT Championship.
It's tremendous, isn't it? It's absolutely wonderful. 3 drivers didn't actually take the start here of this race. Ash Sutton, Matt Bone and Nathan Lewis. So unfortunately we're not going to see those 3 in the race at all. And we have still got Simon Neller on pit road, so he's pretty much done for today. Through Blanchimont, backing out of it, and that's possibly a wise decision there from Bradley. But now John Roberts is looking to make moves, so too is Jonathan Walker.
Jonathan Walker in the number 88 Free M Mercedes goes by. Bet you he's got the best grip on a steering wheel of anyone in the field with a pair of Free M Sim Racing gloves as well. Bet he's been getting his 20% discount, Paul.
I think because he owns the company, I think he's...
100%. Double. I bet you he's got custom ones with his name on.
Oh, absolutely. Why wouldn't you do that?
Yeah. I mean, look how fast they're making them driving. I mean, this is proof. Get yourself a pair of Free M gloves. Look at that.
As they're going up the hill there, through Radion. And look at this gaggle of cars here. They're still not sorting themselves out. This is going to be 36 down to 41st all together as well. There's one of the Evo SR cars looking very second-hand. That's Tom Stevens, who we see there in the Porsche. We got an accident, and that is Simon Underhill. Well, I tell you what, Simon, he's the one the admin who sets up all of the races here in this championship, sets up all the race sessions. He has the worst luck of anybody in this series. Every round of this championship, something seems to happen to him.
Sorry, somebody's put a crash magnet in the front of that BMW. Let's have a look.
Well, he got into the side of the Three Spires car.
Now, I don't know if we can put that one down to bad fortune, Paul.
Maybe a little bit ambitious a move. Yes. I don't know.
Only just a little bit. But easy to do when it's... I mean, it's actually amazing how fierce the battle is. This is just as fierce a contest as some of our 20-minute sprint races.
It's tremendous. And look at this lead 3 here. Absolutely tremendous, just together with each other.
That's a big crash.
Oh, that's a big one on the exit of Blanchimont, yeah.
2 Lamborghinis.
Pete Harrod. Oh, Pete, our Season 7 champion. He's had an absolute nightmare there and ended up in the wall, and I think he took somebody with him as well. I think it might have been Ross Nicholson, because Ross has just come onto pit road. And Tony Draper as well.
And actually blown the 5.2 litre V10 engine. I think he got a help, actually.
Yeah.
Oh, that's violent. Oh, my word.
And that's concrete.
Now, for those watching thinking, oh, calm down, Peter, it's not going to hurt virtual racing. If you're using a direct drive wheel and you get put in the wall that quickly, you've got to be pretty fast to take your hands off the wheel there.
You certainly do. The wheel, if it snaps on you and you're still handing, that's your wrists. Some people have actually broken wrists with direct drive wheels there. So Pete had to back up just that little bit. He was losing it already. So that's what's happened there. He lost it on his own, and the car behind couldn't react in time, makes the slightest bit of contact to help him on his way, and around he goes like a spinning top into another driver.
Carnage so far here at Spa. We're only 13 minutes into the race, but no such problem for the leading trio. Now, do we have a Phil Dennis in the race, second in the championship?
No. No, we do not. But of course, you do get 2 drop rounds in the series, so it's not the end of the world when he doesn't turn up to every race. Look, there goes Kashubai, looking to the inside of Ross McFarlane. No move forthcoming though.
Yeah, that's where, when you're at the very front of the pack, you've got to be careful the type of move you pull, because the margins are so tight between those front. Well, just as I say that, Kai Kashubai is going to go for it. Can he get it done? Oh, they're going to be side by side down to Eau Rouge. Now this is just a measure of who has got the guts. They're absolutely line astern, but I think I tell you what, McFarlane gets off the corner very well and actually closes the move down before they get to Eau Rouge, which is probably a good thing. But all the while they're doing this, look at how Josh Thompson's escaping.
Not just Josh Thompson escaping, look at Jack Sedgwick behind as well. He's been gaining through all of this. So he's slowly catching up to this lead trio. It's going to be a quartet soon. Here comes Kashubai to the inside. McFarlane there. Oh, Kashubai's lost it. He's carried too much speed into Lacombe. And that's a huge incident for your pole sitter in this race.
Now, Paul, you're more up on the technical aspects of iRacing than I am. Is there any reason why the headlights would switch off there in the braking zone?
I'll be honest with you, I haven't a clue.
That is bizarre.
But what I can tell you is that he did carry too much speed into the corner. That's what's caused that. Here we go.
Watch this. Headlights are on. Watch. They do go up. Oh, no,
I think it might be just.
Oh, it's the angle.
The curb.
Sorry. Oh, God.
He's caught the curb there. That's what's happened, and then, hold your brakes there, Kai. Well, he's not going to be doing much powerboat racing through the grass there, but he is back out there on track safely, which is the important thing. But down...
Paul, I was thinking, well, how can I apply powerboat racing to this? And I couldn't think quick enough. So it's actually, that's how silly am I? It's basically when there's just a certain angle where it looks like the headlights have kind of dropped down a level, but just my eyesight, folks. No special special tricks at play. Now, what that Jack Sedgwick is thinking, oh, happy birthday to me.
Well, Jack Sedgwick will be thinking that, but just Josh Thompson as well could be thinking that, because he's now got a 1.3 second lead here. And if he can breach that slipstream and get out on his own and stop dragging the cars behind him along with him, he's got a tremendous opportunity here to just pull away at the front of the field. This is an ideal opportunity to really push at this stage of the race.
I'm sure that's exactly what's going through Josh Thompson's mind right now. He'll have seen that in the mirror, no mistake about it. He will have seen Kai Kashubai spinning. He'll see it on his relative readout on the side of his screen, and he's thinking, right, hammer time, let's go. Push, push, push. Don't worry about fuel consumption at this stage, because the relative benefits of the fuel save compared to actually completely breaking the leading pack are much more in the favour of breaking away from the leading pack. So let's see what happens. And I think, Ross, we know how hard a racer Jack Sedgwick is. He's not going to give McFarlane an easy time, that's for sure.
No, he is not, absolutely. So we've got a tremendous battle down here as well. 32nd, Matt Woodhouse. 33rd, Jonathan Walker. Ryan Hamilton, Simon Field, John Roberts and Tom Stevens all in this queue. So you've got a mixture of Pro-Ams and Am drivers as they come up, pop over the crest there I mean, it's almost as if it's off a rally stage. In fact, it was a rally stage, this venue, just a couple of weeks ago. There's a move to the inside of the Nomad Sim Racing car. That's going to be Simon Field up into 34th. He's trying to recover after his incident down at Lafania. Ryan Hamilton down a position for the time being. Speaking of being down positions, that is going to be Chris Wood taking the long way around Pouhon.
And that's, as Ron Dennis would say, that's suboptimal, that line. And in fact, speaking of Ron Dennis, I don't know if you've seen the...
Yes. I know exactly what you're going to say.
Yeah.
Here's Chris Wood, by the way, back end.
Oh, such a class. But, oh, he had it, though. He had it, and then he didn't have it. Oh.
Bit tail happy as that car.
He's nervous.
I would be nervous at the wheel of that car if it's behaving like that through such a high-speed corner. But yes, a suboptimal interview, wasn't it, from Lando Norris at the weekend?
Giggling about Amsterdam messages, and I love the PR representative in the background who she's killing herself laughing.
Trying her best, bless her, and just not able to keep composed.
Thankfully, they know they've got an understanding boss now who would see the funny side. Anyway, good times at McLaren. They've got a bright coloured car and bright personality now. It's so nice to see. But I tell you what, Chris Wood, going into Pouhon, that's such an important corner, because if you just have the car that little bit too nervous, it can just sap your confidence away. And Chris Wood did very well. And I thought he had it completely straightened up, and then it bit him again.
Jack Sedgwick up to second place now, up at Le Combe, and Josh Thompson, crucially, has broken the slipstream. He's 2 seconds ahead, so that means he's definitely broken the slipstream. Meanwhile, on the right-hand side of your screen, there is car number 16, Kei Kashube, and he has found himself back up to 13th after dropping down to 16th with that spin. And he's back up and running and keeping going, so that's good to see. But he's got a bit of a recovery drive to do now, has Kay. But crucially, Jack Sedgwick moving ahead of McFarlane, and that Ferrari, he's giving it a good send-off here, because of course the Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo is coming to iRacing next week. So yeah, giving it a good send-off tonight.
Absolutely. This is kind of like the season that the BMW M6 GT3 is having. It's had an amazing season, and if you're the BMW board thinking, why are we investing in a new car, guys? This old one's fine. Nothing wrong with it. But of course, racing always does evolve. Interesting to see what the differences are. I'm sure it will be an evolution rather than a revolution. It certainly looks very similar, that's for sure. But Jack Sedgwick is threatening to break already from Ross McFarlane. It seems like McFarlane actually struggling a little bit to keep up with the pace of Sedgwick. Now, can Sedgwick, he's made it there, so Sedgwick definitely the man on the move, but can he bridge the gap up to Thompson? I actually think he might be able to here, Paul.
He bridged the gap up to Kashube and McFarlane when they were battling for second place. So he's got the opportunity out there to be able to move forward, and he's got the pace and experience as Jack, that's for sure. So you never know. We'll have to wait and see. But I wouldn't write off Ross McFarlane yet. There's a reason why I said he's the king of the endurance races here in the World GT Championship, because he's always either first place or up there fighting for first place at the end of the race, and seems to pull out strategic moves each and every round of the endurance part of this championship. And it's basically one way how he gets so high up in the pro standings, to currently lead the pro standings at the moment. You would say after the first of the endurance events here this season, really put him in a solid position. And he's been able to now just, again, find himself up near the front here. He is a talented driver, and he certainly mixes it with those drivers of World Championship experience.
Indeed, absolutely. Of course, Jack Sedgwick racing in PESC last season, as did Josh Thompson, so World Championship licence holders in the past. And Ross McFarlane, this is for him. This is dreamland, because the two cars ahead of him, they're not the prime championship contenders at this point of the season, where Josh Thompson's, in his own words, after last weekend, he says, well, that's championship over. As you rightly said, Paul, I don't think it is. It never is over until it's over. But for Ross McFarlane, Phil Dennis is not here, and Jack Sedgwick a little bit further down the order as well. So he doesn't necessarily need to throw massive risk at this, and he can just sit in there on the back of that Ferrari and just click off the lap times, which we know he can. And that guile and wise approach, I think, will stand him in good stead when we get to the checkered flag in 82 minutes' time.
And I can tell you that Michael Blake has officially retired from the race. He is out of this one. So the AM driver who was doing so well in the AM Championship, this is definitely going to be one of his drop score weeks you have to feel here today as the drivers come out the bus stop chicane. The light bulbs, the flash bulbs flashing away in the stands. The fans really getting excited about what they're seeing on track right now. What we are seeing is David Baker, 15th place. I think he'll be very disappointed being this far down in the field today.
I should think he will, yes, indeed. But plenty of time to make moves, and this is, it's easy to get excited in the first stages of endurance racing, but it is just so hard to adjust your brain to just think ahead, to think, right, it's never over till it's over, and I shall think of more cliches and write them down. But there we go, going for a move around the outside. That's a beautiful manoeuvre there from David Baker, very clean, very tidy, and keeps the speed up as well. That was a corker.
And I think Mike Horder realised that it wasn't on to try and defend that for all it was worth. It's a long race, as you mentioned. And that's Bradley Hulse. He's had a big one off at the top of Radion, and it shows how that corner can bite even when the drivers are into a rhythm.
And it looks like the car is maybe just snaking slightly, so this will be a slow and steady lap back to the pits for Bradley Hulse. So that Porsche looks really nervous. Of course, it's a rear engine car, 4-litre flat 6 engine right over the back wheels, and when the weight starts to transfer, it's very hard to get back on top of it, and that looked nasty there.
Well, as we'll look on board, he's behind his teammate there, and it's already losing it. And
big.
Bang!
Look how much opposite lock he put in there and still couldn't get it.
Did well to then keep it out of the way of everybody else, though, to be fair. That's a good recovery to just get it pulled over, because it was moving back towards the middle of the track, and he got it pulled over to the left-hand side so nobody else wiped him out there. But we've seen now, so that's been Chris Wood with a nervous-looking car down at Poole. Bradley Hulse, nervous-looking car that's ended up sending him into the wall up over Radion. These Porsches, they don't look stable around here tonight. They're obviously having to trim them out as much as possible to get the top speed.
The only thing I think that might have caught Bradley Hulse out there is the car in front of Bradley coming up to the Eau Rouge was only maybe 2 car lengths ahead as Ross McFarlane goes back into second on Jack Sedgwick. Feel they might just trade places for the next little while possibly, but I think what maybe might have caught Bradley out there was with the Mercedes just 2 car lengths, maybe even a car length and a half ahead. There's a lot of aero wash, particularly on the Porsche, and I think it was a Mercedes in front. And I was chatting to Kevin Estra a few weeks ago for an interview, and he said that the aero wash can actually start from 4 car lengths ahead, and he says when you're behind the Mercedes, he said, and I quote, he says it is a disaster. The dirty air that comes off the back of the big Merc is really quite tricky, and that maybe was what ran Bradley wide, and then onto the curb it just lost grip.
Yeah, and there's very little you could do at that point. You're pretty much a passenger at that point then, that part of the circuit. Keke Jube, by the way, on his recovery drive, has got the fastest lap, as you can see on the left-hand side, with the purple highlight on the timing tower. As David Baker, we have a look at here, he's up to 13th now, so having a bit of a recovery drive after his slowdown penalty through Eau Rouge Radion lap 2, so he's trying to get back up into that top 10, but he's got a little bit of a charge he's got to make now, because he's 3 nearly 4 seconds behind the 12th place driver of Elliott Harper. Right now, Brian Loynes, Mike Horder, Chris Wood, all getting dragged along by David Baker in that slipstream. I'm looking at the lap times, and it does look like Josh Thompson at the front is just pulling away slightly over second places. Well, I say that, Ross McFarlane just sets the new fastest lap.
Very impressive stuff there from Ross McFarlane, and not in the draft either. Completely clean with Jack Sedgwick right on his tail, and in fact Sedgwick has just dropped back a touch on McFarlane, and of course Sedgwick had to put in a lot of quick laps to make his way to that front group. I wondered maybe just backing off and everything, and that's okay for this first stint. It won't be long till they come to pit road, and maybe Sedgwick just thinking, okay, and I've got a fuel number to hit here, I'll just sit behind Ross McFarlane for a few laps.
Now, remember one of those names that I said didn't take to the start? Matthew Bunn, series admin and pretty much series organizer. I don't know if you've seen this, but we'll read it out in the on the screen as well for people to hear in the broadcast. But he fell asleep, putting his young child to bed, woke up, rushed to the PC, and saw that it was lap 2. How many racing drivers have you ever heard sleeping through the start of the race?
I think Bruce Anstey has nearly done it in the Isle of Man TT. He was always known for having to be woken up 10 minutes before the start. I have to be honest, Paul, I must admit I did have a little nap before my dinner tonight, because I always like to have full energy for commentating on World GT, because it does. There's always storylines going on up and down the field that we've got to keep an eye on.
Absolutely. Well, to keep you up to date with everything going on here, I can tell you Josh Thompson does lead this race then by 2.5 seconds ahead of Ross McFarlane, with Jack Sedgwick third place. That's in your top 3 in terms of pro drivers. Pro-Am, your top Pro-Am is actually Elliott Harper in 12th place, and he is just a couple of places ahead of Brian Loynes and Mike Horder, who are fighting for second and third place in class. Now, it is important to take into account that for the Enduro Cup, it's where you finish in class that goes towards the Enduro Cup. As part of the calculation, there is something more. We'll get into that a little bit later on. In your AM category, just looking down my timing sheet, I do believe it's Andy Archer who's leading that one. Car 55 in 25th. For the Century Sim Esports team. There you go. Get the logo on there, because we can't see it on the side of the car right there. It's that dark now. He's 25th. 26th is James Whitehouse, with Paul Webster 27th. So the 3 AM drivers, first, second and third, all together out there on track. So they're all keeping together in all of this. Here we are on board Mark Woodhouse, 30th place. He's got Adam Hedgecock, in front of him, in a rather used-looking boosted car in the Mercedes in front of him there, Peter.
Indeed, yes. Lord Hedge has been, well, it maybe looks like that car's been through a hedge, unfortunately. And, we've got Woodhouse as well. We've got all the foliage-related names here. Spa with Chris Wood as well. They should start a team together. The Garden Gophers. That would be a good three-car team.
You're on your own there, Peter.
I'm on my own. Okay, fair enough. I'm on my own a lot, so it's all right. Only child, you see. Oh, and now is Mark Woodhouse going to make a move here on Hedgecock? I think he is. He's got the run side by side into Lacombe, and Hedgecock gives the room in the Mercedes, and there's a little rub there, and Woodhouse gets by. Typical Spa-Lacombe exchange, but good respect from both drivers. It's not easy to get through there without having a bit of rubbing and barging.
Well, that's the immortal Porsche versus the boosted Farage Mercedes AMG. That AMG with all the grunt in the world, but does suffer from a little bit of understeer, does that car, and a lot of drivers, myself included, just don't get on with that car, but it suits some people's driving styles, it certainly seems to be that quite a number of those drivers out there do enjoy the Mercedes. So that was the change of position for 29th in the race here. And Bradley Halls is once again down on pit road, I've seen on the timing screen here. By the way, time it RaceSpot.tv/timing to keep up to date with all of the action in this race here today. The link is in the YouTube chat, so do make sure you check that out if we're not showing the car that you want to be following along with. And well, there's a number of battles. Pretty much in the first 15 are all grouped together. There's been little gaggles of cars as Kei Kashube moving up to 9th place now, ahead of Aaron Rose and Ashley Finch.
Yeah, great stuff there from Kai Kashube. Just looking at his lap time, 2:17.3 last time by. That's about 0.6 of a second off the leaders. So I'm sure Kai in clean air could match the pace of the leaders, but when you're in traffic, it's impossible to do that. So looks like, what's the gap now for Kai Upton? He's got about 5 seconds up to the number 3 car of Jesse Jones. Now I think this next phase, Paul, this is when we're going to know if Kai Kashube can fight back and get himself back into the podium fight.
I could tell you, by the way, the last 5 lap average for between Josh Thompson and Ross McFarlane, 0.03 of a second difference over the last 5 lap average. I think that is incredibly close over 5 laps between the two of them.
Have you got some hooky timing software? I need to get a password for that, Paul.
But the timing screen that I see gives me a little bit more detail than some other timing software, so that's why I get to see that. But yes, that is what the 5 lap average is. It's literally 0.03 of a second difference between the two of them. So that is incredibly close between the two of them. As we look further back at the battle for 13th place, sorry. That's David Baker, Brian Loynes, Mike Horder, as the boosted Jericho car, Three Spires Motorsport car gets out of the way. Toby Ward, there we go. Got the name of the team right, even though it's got Jericho written in big letters down the side of it. And change of team name this season, which is what keeps on catching me out. Yeah, that was Toby Ward who got out of the way of the 3-car battle, and they're nicely spread out here, the 3 Lamborghinis, so pretty similar in pace. So it's all about what you do in the tight and twisty stuff that can make the difference.
Absolutely. Yeah, these Lamborghinis running in almost flying formation at the moment, almost like the Italian tricolore, the Italian version of the Red Arrows. I think actually Lamborghini did a special edition Huracan in honour of the tricolor air. They're not a display team. I think they are actually a military unit. We're digressing though. It wouldn't be an endurance race in darkness if we didn't digress slightly, Paul.
Well, the Red Arrows are a military unit themselves.
But they wouldn't be called into action. Combat. They're not a combat unit, that's what I'm looking for.
But the pilots could be called into action because they are all have seen
action
tours of duty. So they could well be. Sorry, we are digressing a little bit. But then again, what commentary team doing an endurance race doesn't digress a little bit at times?
None that I know anyway. I think it's very, very, very important as well. But this is another car as well that's had it's great actually, Paul, when you see the GT3 formula, how the cars, when a model comes out, it stays in homologation for a long time. It's not as if the team have to keep reinvesting in a new model all the time. You can keep the same chassis for huge amounts of mileage and just replace the components. Now I know it's all, relatively speaking, still a colossally expensive business to go motor racing, but the GT3 category, the Huracan, it's been with us for some time now.
Certainly has, and it's a venerable car. Certainly does a very, very good job as well in GT3 racing. And now I am noticing, by the way, Ross McFarlane has been closing up just that little bit on Josh Thompson, only by about a tenth or two. but he's starting to catch up on Josh. So I wonder if Josh is having to do a bit of fuel saving, or perhaps has reached a little bit of traffic. I think it could be the traffic option, as here we go, side-by-side action. Elias Seppänen and Matt Turnbull. Turnbull wants to get by, but Seppänen says, no thank you.
Looking at the times last time by, 2:16.8 for Josh Thompson, the same as Sedgwick, but 2:16.5 for McFarlane. I actually think it's McFarlane who's just pushing really, really hard. At the moment, he's dropped Sedgwick. He's about a second ahead of Jack Sedgwick, is Ross McFarlane, and it's starting to close the gap back down to Thompson. But tell you what, Josh Thompson has driven beautifully so far, and when we mentioned it, Paul, when he had to brake, he really put in those qualifying laps when it mattered.
Look at Matt Turnbull, he's determined here, going side by side into Lavagna. Not going to make the move that he can make overtakes through there, and I can see, I have seen in the past cars making overtakes through Lavagna as well, so it's not impossible to do it, but you have to have a certain amount of cooperation between the two drivers, as we did see Andy Archer on the screen going down pit road, so he's having his first pit stop. Of course, 2 mandatory pit stops here today in this race, so wide open pit strategy, but we normally see them going around about 40-45 minutes in these endurance races before they do head on down to pit road. And if you're stuck behind somebody round about now and you think you're confident that you would be faster, do you start thinking here, Peter, right, I'll pit, get myself a bit of clean air, because Spa is a long track, 7 kilometres, you're more likely to find some clean air here than at the Red Bull Ring.
Yes, you are, and of course you can also, you can if it's 2 compulsory pit stops, that's 3 separate stints, and you divide the race into 3, it's 35 minutes a stint. So we're at that point now. So yeah, we might start to see pit lane get quite busy in the new, not too distant future, and I think it depends what situation you're in. And Kai Kashubi, now he has had a couple of laps of open air, and oh my word, 2:16.3 last time by, which is as is Josh Thompson. Oh,
there was a car off there. I believe that's Adam Hedgecock.
Oh,
the boosted Virage driver who we saw. Yep, there he is, car 13. Unlucky for some, and it would appear so for Adam here. Got the car back going though. So yeah, he's had a moment up at Le Camp. Not the first one we've seen having a moment up there either. Was he helped? No, it was all on his own there. Oh, he did get in front of that battle though between Seppänen and Matt Turnbull.
The only good thing, the only crumb of comfort I should say for Adam Hedgecock there is that he could go and take his pit stop now, get a fast repair, and he kind of wouldn't be pitting out of sequence, so he wouldn't be taking an extra stop to get that damage sorted out. So if you're going to make a mistake, now is kind of the time to do it, to get it out of the way. So yeah, well, I would imagine we'll see Adam Hedgecock coming into pit lane now. Now for tyres, I presume, Paul, the drivers will make the tyre last the whole hour and 45 minutes, but I guess the tyre will be pretty shredded up by then.
Well, we did see at the first of the endurance races here in the World GT Championship, we did see some taking tyres at the first pit stop and have that as their long pit stop, and some taking tyres at the second pit stop as Elias Seppänen and Matt Turnbull both come onto pit road. Jack Sedgwick, fastest lap of the race. So 2 drivers that were battling have come onto pit road at the exact same time. So we did see that mixture of, Ross McFarlane, who ended up winning that race earlier in the season, he did actually go without changing tyres. Everybody else pretty much out there did change tyres. So it'll be intriguing to see what the pit stop times are. I can tell you, by the way, Adam Hedgecock has already had his first pit stop, and it was about a lap and a half into 2 laps into his stint when he had that spin. So he's going to have to go a while before he can head onto pit road again.
Oh, that's really difficult timing then for Adam Hedgecock and Kai Kashubi putting a 2:16.1. That is rapid pace in a GT3 car, but pit lane starting to get busy now, and Sepinen in. So what this is, will we see any deviation in strategy? I would think that the top guys, they'll be following each other in, I would imagine. It may be a lap apart at the most.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe Josh Thompson, with him being out on his own, having to come in a lap earlier, perhaps, as tyres for Sepinen. I've not seen that Lamborghini go up, and in fact it hasn't. So different strategies at play there. Matt Turnbull's decided, I'm happy with my tyres, I'm going to carry on. Ben Gregory and Morgan Butler are down on pit road as well, just for information.
Interestingly there, you could actually got a great impression of what the visual difference was, and it doesn't look so bad to stay in and take the tyres. But the thing is, if you're going to take the tyres, if you're going to make that investment in time, you need the clear track to be able to make the most of them. If you get stuck in traffic with new tyres on, that's a complete disaster. So it is a little bit in the lap of the gods. So intriguing. That's what we love about endurance racing.
In fact, the top three are all in here. So we've got a pit party on the screen right now, and I've got a funny feeling that a couple of others are going onto pit road as well. Michael Evdoka onto pit road now. Oscar Cooper and Jesse Jones, both for the RSR by G Performance team, are staying out, as is Kai Kashubi. So Kai has been able to hang on to a bit of fuel out there. Going to save some fuel for himself, so maybe a lap longer. Ashley Finch is staying out as well. So we've got a ton of cars coming onto pit road right now. As I say, a true pit party at play. And this is where we see, Peter, now. Are we going to see different strategies? Are we going to see tyres taken by some, not by others?
Well, let's see if the cars go up on the jacks. That means they are taking tyres at the moment. No for Josh Thompson at the moment. No for Ross McFarlane at the moment. No for Jack Sedgwick. So the fuel going in for all three cars. I don't see them going up on the jacks, Paul, do you?
Well, you got to remember, GT3, it's fuel first. And then tyres. So that's what makes it such a difference in the pit stops.
Well, this is tense. So we're going to see who's going to come flying out of pit lane, who's going to go up on the jacks, if anyone.
That's Ross McFarlane jumping Josh Thompson.
Okay, and it looked like Cedric is going to stay in for tyres.
No, Cedric has got away.
He has got away, sorry, do apologise. So yes, big differences in the pit then. Jack Cedric obviously burned up a lot more fuel making his way up through the field. Ross McFarlane, well, you called it, Paul, Mr. Endurance, he's played a blinder there, and Josh Thompson is probably looking at that Lamborghini going, how did you do that?
It's called being behind Josh Thompson for a long time.
He wasn't in the draft, that was the thing, He wasn't in the draft for very long.
But the thing there, though, you've got to remember is any amount of time in the draft is going to save you fuel, and the more fuel that you can save, the shorter your pit stop, and you might as well match what the leader's doing if you're in second place, if you're confident you're going to have about 1.5, nearly 2 seconds less of fuel to take.
It's an interest. The only thing I would maybe say is the driving styles of the two machines could be different as well, because the Lamborghini is a corner speed car. It's got brilliant mid-corner speed, and I wonder if you can maybe just be a little bit more light-footed in the way you drive the Lamborghini, a little bit more swooping lines in that car, whereas the BMW, a little bit maybe more break it deep into the corner, get it turned and then open up the power as quick as you can. It's maybe a little bit more of a thirsty car to drive, not necessarily technologically speaking, but the approach to driving it, they're very different. The Lamborghini's low slung, it's got the engine in the middle, it's a naturally aspirated car as well. The BMW's a turbo in the front, so we're talking fine margins here, Paul, but fine margins make a difference.
So they sure do, that's for sure. By the way, you see the top 5 on pit road. Billy Fletcher, Ashley Finch, Kate Shoebate, Jesse Jones and Oscar Cooper all able to go a lap longer than the guys who were in the lead this one before the pit stop started. So I do see, I'm looking at my pit stop times, there's not that many people who have actually taken tyres, and that could be a difference here out there. Now, Elias Seppänen, his pit stop was about 38.3 seconds. That's almost as if he's accidentally left tyres on and it's taken one tyre. Because you're talking about 6.5, 7 seconds for a tyre to be done, and if you're 30 seconds, that would make it right at 38.3 seconds for a pit stop.
Okay, right. Well, this is Monte Carlo rally stuff, Paul. Where you throw, it's like you're crossing the snow tire and the intermediate wet, and hand cutting on the way to the stage and all stuff like that. No, not quite. I jest, but that car is going to be, if that is the case, Paul, and I think you're spot on. That car is going to be horribly out of balance, surely.
I have seen it in the old World Championship GT series many moons ago that I commentated on.
When all this was fields.
One team won the race at Silverstone because they took a front left tyre at the pit stop. Everyone else took a full set of tyres, and it proved to be the winning move.
That is. I love how alternative a strategy that is. That's that is a tale you could, when you're doing Paul Smith's Guide to Sensible Sim Racing. I feel that should be a chapter. I remember back at Silverstone, when the team put on one front left tyre.
But it won them the race, though, because they were so
absolutely.
short in the pit stop. They were able to get that gap, so then they could manage that gap and be able to make the tyre last. By the way, coming out of pit road there is the 724 of Joel Evans. He's come out the pit road in 37th place, and he's got a fast-moving Tom Stevens to the inside. Porsche versus Lamborghini. Well, the Lamborghini can't compete because, of course, it was coming from a considerably slower speed. Look at this, Keika Shubei now to fourth place, should I say, ahead of Michael Evdoka, and Matt Turnbull's dropped back a little bit, down to 6th. When you consider that he was battling with Elias Seppänen for 4th places earlier on.
So this has been a super recovery drive from Keika Shubei, and he's not quite back in the game yet, but he's getting close. He's on the dance floor, and the music is getting louder for the podium battle. And well, after losing a huge chunk of time and critically track position that he's had to gain back the hard way, it's been a super drive from Keika Shubei. I have to say, Paul, I'm flabbergasted by that the story of the front left tyre. You can just imagine their crew chief, a sort of wise old man, just standing on the corner of the pit box with the flat cap on. I can see that's why you like it. And with a sort of Galosi's cigarette just hanging. Other cigarettes are available, hanging out the corner of his mouth, going.
Not that we condone cigarettes.
No, not that we condone it. No, but it's from a bygone era. He's from a bygone era, you see. That's part of the story. And he's just like, just put one on the front left. They're going, you maniac, what are you doing? He goes, trust me, it'll work, as he pings the cigarette off into the distance.
Do you know what, thinking of that sort of thing, I always remember a photograph of Joe Winkelhock from the British Touring Car Championship, who was known as Smoking Joe. And he did smoke, and the photo was in the pit lane next to a no smoking sign there with a cigarette in hand. So that goes to show Joe Winkelhock what he thought of the rules there. But yeah, he just conjured that image in my head then of that picture. By the way, Keika Shubei has now just pulled away a little bit of Michael Evdoka, who I do believe it's actually his birthday today for Michael. So many happy returns to you, Michael. As Josh Thompson sitting behind Ross McFarlane, I think he's sat there thinking, right, okay, pulling away, breaking the draft didn't work out for me. Let's try sitting the draft now.
I think you're spot on there, Paul. I think it's like you say, tried that strategy, and that's pretty cruel, actually. You have to say, for Josh Thompson, he did everything right in that first stint and drove very, very well, and then to have that Lamborghini burst past you while you're still waiting for those last couple of milliliters of fuel. Oh, that must sting. And I think, yeah, he once bitten, twice shy. I think he'll just sit there behind Ross McFarlane and just, yeah, and almost by the end of this second stint, I actually think by the end it'll slightly irritate Ross McFarlane as well, because Josh, I think, will sit there, even if there is an opportunity to get a run, he won't take it. I think he'll just sit there thinking, right, this is fuel conservation game, so that he then gets the track position back for the dash to the flag.
Yeah, it's intriguing. I love the strategy battle of endurance racing. It's that mental battle against a team, not just out there on track, but also behind the scenes strategically. As here we see the battle on 7th backs. That's Oscar Kopa, Elias Seppänen, who's on fresh tyres, so this should be relatively easy for Seppänen. In fact, I think he was rather gifted that position there, so Oscar Kopa allowing him by. Jesse Jones, Kopa's teammate, in 9th place, and Aaron Rose rounding out the top 10 there. And it's actually rare for us to not have a Pro-Am just randomly in the top 10 here, so that just goes to show in this endurance race how things have all sort of gone into their own little categories, and it shows how the classification that the admins here in this championship have done a very, very competent job of that.
Quite. I think it also shows you how Spa really is the test of Grand Prix racetracks. You know, the Nürburgring is a different thing. You know, that's another challenge entirely. It's almost its own category, actually, I would say. But Spa, out of Grand Prix tracks, it is the test for car and indeed driver, and I think that's what we're seeing here, where the pro drivers are really able. It's a track where the driver's able to make the difference, I think, and a lot of drivers do say that Spa is their favourite for that reason. So I think that there is an element of that. But coming back to your point on the strategy, Paul, when you're in that front 3 or 4 with McFarlane, Thompson, Cedric, Kashubi, they're separated by such minute margins on lap time. Really, your strategy, that's your most potent weapon.
Now, speaking of the strategy, by the way, it's worth looking at the pit stop times that they were actually held stationary in the pit box, because Kei Kashubi and Michael Evdoka did actually run a little bit of a shorter pit stop, as did Aaron Rose. So those 3 drivers in the top 10 have decided they elected to go for their shorter pit stop at the first pit stop here, because it is 3 mandatory pit stops and you can go about 45 minutes on the fuel here. 45 to 50 minutes if you're really good at saving fuel. You're going to have one pit stop shorter than the other, unless you do decide to just go even all the way through the race. So some taking that shorter pit stop early, trying to get themselves into a track position, because track position can be key. And by the way, Elias Seppänen has just dropped off that battle for 7th place onwards.
I think this could be an internet issue. I think, because he's not showing on the time scale. I think this is maybe a disconnection actually for Elias Seppänen. It's just the way it's behaving on the timing screen. I think it is. Oh, that is cruel. Well, if that is the case, that is, if you're a relatively new viewer to virtual motorsport, that's kind of the virtual motorsport equivalent of an engine blowing up, or an electrical failure.
Or getting a random puncture or something
or
like that.
Or putting diesel in it, or what?
Yeah.
Random puncture, good one as well. And oh, that's just gutting. And it's amazing how many times we've seen it at pretty high profile level as well.
I've actually seen it at one 24-hour race where all the drivers that were Finnish drivers, the main internet provider of Finland decided that it was a good time to basically force a reset on all the Finnish people's routers, because it was the middle of the night. Nobody will be on the internet at 2 o'clock in the morning, and every Finnish driver that was racing at that time instantly dropped out of the race session. It was unbelievable to see, and we have had it confirmed. Elias Seppänen has been disconnected from the server due to internet issues. So heartbreak for Seppänen, the BS competition driver, who's putting up a very, very good show in this race so far.
He was doing the one tyre strategy. He's hired the old crew chief, and it was working so well. What is the crew chief seeing now? He's thinking, oh, technology, who needs it?
These newfangled computers. Get back to belt drives and
carbs.
Speaking of carbs, I had plenty of those tonight, but enough about my diet.
Yeah, wonderful stir fry cooked by my lovely fiance. Beef stir fry was delicious. I was enjoying it so much I looked at the time going, oh damn, I better get up the stairs.
Well, we can tell you that Josh Thompson has just sat behind for the time being. You can see him there. We're looking at Ross McFarlane, the race leader. Car number 1, he is the current champion from season 9. So he finds himself at the head of the field, and he finds himself forging a path that Josh Thompson is just following his way through. And whoever's at the front of a queue of cars, even if it's just 2 of them, they are going to be feeling the effects of that in terms of fuel usage. And he's flashing the headlights at somebody. He has got some lap traffic ahead, not too far ahead either. So I think just catching their attention to say, look, hello, wake up, we are coming through to lap you in the next lap or so.
Always good. It's good just to give a little bit of a warning if necessary. I'm not a fan of the just standing behind and just smashing the headlight flash button. That is just pointless. But it can actually be if you use it correctly, it can be a useful tool just to warn a driver that you're on your way. And Kenneth Gilbranson's off in a big way at the bus stop chicane, and he's a long way off the road there.
Yeah, it's a good job. There's a lot of runoff there. And that Porsche, now don't say we've had another Porsche lose control of the back end. Well, it's fine through there. There's a car that's had an incident. That's a Mercedes. I didn't catch which car it was. And Gulbranson into the wall there. Innocent party just comes around the corner to find the road blocked.
Oh my. And I tell you what, Kenneth Gilbranson did so well to keep it out of the wall in the first stage, and if there'd been a bit more runoff there, he would have been okay, but then just flattened into the wall, and it didn't appear to move there, and almost as if he's thinking, shall I give up or not? As actually Finch, just gets into a big old tank slapper there in the Mercedes, and oh dear.
And to be fair to Finch, he was foot flat on the brake. He was doing all he could to stop that car, to blow it up. But that Mercedes, it just very little that he could do there, and that meant that he was the one who lost control. And Kenneth Gilbranson, unfortunately, is the one who came round the corner, and then you don't see much. You just see smoke. Where's that car? It's going that way. It's too late.
That's just horrifically bad fortune for Kenneth Gilbranson there. Did everything he could do, and in fact that could have been a complete write the car off job and race over. But I think the damage will be light enough that should Kenneth Gilbranson want to continue, he will be able to. He's not
retired.
Okay. Sometimes at that point it's easy for a driver to just go. That maybe just time to just give up, because the poor fortune there is so unlucky, and that's something where it happened so quickly in front that there wouldn't have been time to show a yellow flag in that situation. No,
and like I say, the fact that Finch, you could sit as Josh Thompson backing off the throttle there. He's playing that strategy game. And if he's smart, he will pit the same time as Ross McFarlane and do to McFarlane what McFarlane did to him at the last pit stop. So, Josh Thompson playing the games right now. That's why you're not seeing them change position. All he's caring about right now is a fuel number. Meanwhile, Keiko Shube is now about 5 seconds. Yeah, he's 5 seconds behind, and he has been lapping almost, he's 0.8 of a second faster on that last lap alone.
Yeah, that rate of catching has been the case for the last few laps. We've been looking at Kai Kashube's lap times closely. He's about around 5-6 of a second a lap quicker. So Ross McFarlane, now this is the interesting one now, is that Ross McFarlane is clearly not running 100% to the pace he could if he was pushing on a qualifying lap, because he's not stupid. He knows exactly what Josh Thompson's doing behind. And Kai Kashube is going to get himself back into, I'm sure will get himself back into this podium battle, but will have used up a lot of fuel doing so. So it's going to be fascinating to see just how much fuel both of these, both Ross McFarlane and Josh Thompson have saved in comparison to Kai Kashube. This is now a 3-car equation now, isn't it?
Well, and we do believe, though, with Kai Kashube, though, that he is running a little bit lighter anyway, because he took that shorter pit stop in the pit stop. Yes. So it could be that he is actually... this lap traffic has come at the worst possible time for your race leaders. I do believe Sam Underhill flashing the headlights as Josh Thompson wants to go by. He does that, but your race leader stuck behind the Mercedes, and I do believe that is Tony Draper, the Century Esports team. Century Sim Esports. Again, it's another team that's just slightly changed the name, and it always catches me out in the series. And while Thompson was just fully on the light flash button, he wanted to make sure that he didn't get blocked at all in that.
Yeah, I think what Josh Thompson was saying there was, I'm coming through as well, in case you... Yes, I think that it's not get out of my way, I'm in a Range Rover in the outside lane. It's, just saying, I'm coming through too, don't turn in kind of thing. That's the thing, is if you use the headlight flash correctly, it can be a useful tool rather than just being a pest. So, yeah, they get through clean, but I tell you what, Josh Thompson is actually going to have to push quite hard for another few corners, because he needs to get back into that close draft of Ross McFarlane. Ross McFarlane did gain maybe 4/10 in that little exchange, and that can be critical.
It certainly can. By the way, we're still keeping an eye on this battle. Cooper and Jones have been just swapping positions to two teammates, so they're almost working together, like we not like to say in these endurance races, like they're in a peloton in road cycle racing, just working together, trying to give each other that benefit of the slipstream. But they've got to be careful, because Aaron Rose is with them, and he's another one of those drivers who did take the shorter pit stop this first time, so he will be a little bit lighter on fuel, will Aaron, and he'll be pushing on, trying to make up as much time and position, because this is it. If you're in a lighter car, you need to be moving forward and get past these cars as quickly as possible.
That you do. Yeah, you've got to make the most of what strategical ploy you're using. As you see, the brakes going bright orange with the heat heading into the bus stop. They're coming on from top gear there all the way down to, probably bottom gear, 6th down to 1st in these GT3 machines. Of course, proper sequential race gearboxes. You just pull the paddle and down it goes, and of course on the way up, no need for a clutch, anything like that. Just pull the paddle and up it goes. Really technologically advanced race cars, these GT3s. Lots of aerodynamic grip, although they might not necessarily look like it apart from the obvious rear wing, but there's lots of little bits on a GT3 car that make it into pucker race car that it is. When you hear about some of the corner speeds, and particularly places like the Nürburgring, they're doing like around if you go around like Metzgesfeld, for example, it's like 240 kilometers an hour through there, and you think, oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's a bit crazy, isn't it, the speeds that these cars get up to, when you consider that effectively they are a road car that looks like it's been backwards through a Halfords with all the bits of aero kits put onto it, but yeah, I mean, they're a bit more advanced than the wings that you can get from said shop. Other automotive supplies are available. There we go. That's that one. But they are a road-going car. The Shell.
When they did crash through Halfords, they did miss The stereo section, though,
Yes.
they didn't pick up a subwoofer on the way through.
But it is the shell of the car, the main sort of cockpit area that the teams all get from the manufacturers, and then everything else on the car just gets bolted on. Your roll cage gets put into it. I was fortunate enough that back in 2014 I got to have a tour around the old ProDrive facility before they moved into the new factory that they've got there down in Banbury. And it was fascinating to see the whole fabrication process from body shell, putting the roll cage in, all the way through to the finished vehicle in the race base.
It's amazing, isn't it? I've had the great fortune of going around the old ProDrive facility as well, and it was mainly rally cars that were on the go that day when they had the minis, and also a few Aston Martins as well. And they are a serious race car. And the thing is in a lot of places, like for example Porsche, even if you won the lottery tomorrow, you couldn't pick up the phone to Mark Lieb at Porsche Motorsport sales and say, I'd like to buy a GT3R. Say, well, no, there's they only make a certain number of them, and critically they're only sold to eligible customers.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean you've swooned your dealer. It's actually more, will you represent the brand well enough? Because that is obviously what the customer teams are doing with these cars in the real world. So it just shows you having that exclusivity. It just shows you the success of the GT3 car.
Certainly does. Here we are on board the Huracan Lamborghini. Mike Horder, boosted Farage, currently 14th.
Currently not 100% throttle either.
Yeah, currently behind Chris Wood and Brian Lyons. So that's a Pro-Am, and your leading Pro-Am is Brian Lyons, and then Mike Horder that we're on board with right now, he's the second placed Pro-Am driver. So in terms of his championship, he's not losing out that many points to Brian Lyons. And in terms of the Enduro Cup, and I did mention that we were going to say about that and to explain. If you've got a doctorate in astrodynamics, then I think you might be able to know what and fully understand what the workout for the Enduro Cup here, because it's simple yet complex. It is the best way of putting it.
It's like the Nürburgring Langstrecken series overall points. Oh, big moment there in front for 92 of Loynes there, having a big old wiggle.
It was certainly a big old wiggle. And Chris Wood.
Sorry,
Chris
Paul.
Wood.
Was it Chris Wood? Sorry.
Yeah.
It looked like a big moment at Puon, and I thought, oh, that's looking loose. And then, next corner, it did finally let go. It has really shocked me tonight, Paul, just how nasty these Porsches are looking today.
And I suspected it earlier on. I do think they're having to trim out that rear wing of the car to get as much speed as possible. I mean, you just clip the curb a little bit there, gets out onto the gravel, able to hold on to it. Well held there, Chris. That's the second time we've had to say well held. Meanwhile, Morgan Butler is embroiled in a battle with Chris van der Ness and Max Wolf. So the two Evo SR drivers trying to gang up on that Craig setup shop BMW in front of them.
This definitely qualifies for the nomenclature of a gaggle. That is for sure. This is what you would see as a gaggle. Morgan Butler leading the way in the lovely blue, white, and orange Craig's setup shop BMW. I see there's a bit of transfer deadline day going on at that outfit at the moment, Paul. Drivers coming in, drivers coming out.
Well, it's where's Jim White when you need it? Oh wait, no, sorry, he's retired, hasn't he? So we don't get to see him calling the transfer deadline stuff anymore. I was going to quickly just touch on the Enduro Cup. So the Enduro Cup, for the 4 endurance races, you score points for that depending on where you finish in your category. So if you're the top AM driver, you will score the same amount of points for the Enduro Cup as the leader, who happens to be a pro driver of this race. But also, you the points calculation is a little bit funny. It is class finishing position points minus any instant points that you accumulate, so it encourages clean driving as well, but then also positions gained, you get a half a point for every position gained. So if you gain 2 positions, that's an extra point for you in the Enduro Cup. As I say, you need a astrodynamics degree to be able to, a doctorate even, to be able to make sense of that, but it does work, and it gives something extra, it adds something extra to the championship for those drivers who maybe prefer the endurance events of this championship.
I can just hear the precipitation building on your brow trying to explain that, Paul. Oh my word, that's I'm sweating myself. Just I'm going right. Okay, yeah, got you. Oh no, you've lost me. Yeah, anyway, we'll just stick to what we do here in the commentary box. I think, Paul, that's for sure. Oh. So Kai Kashubi, he is just pulling time out of the leading pair of Ross McFarlane and Josh Thompson, and while they're playing the fuel safe game, Kai Kashubi, well, that, of course, the one thing is yes, Kai Kashubi's been able to fight his way back up into the podium battle, but that spin earlier on, he's still paying the invoice for that, Paul, because he's not got as many, should we say, strategical cards to play as the leading pair do.
Yeah, exactly. That's a very good point you make there, Peter. That's why we have you here. You make very pertinent observations out here as I find my thesaurus and get some big words out here on commentary. But we've got just over half an hour to go in this race, and we've had the first 1 or 2 pit stops happen that are what you would consider just a strategic call of, right, this is the time for me to make my pit stop. So we are starting to get into this final pit stop phase now, Peter, and I think it's going to be the last 10-15 minutes where we find out where we stand here in this race.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it kind of is like a 24-hour race condensed in miniature, because you look at like a race like the Rolex 24 at Daytona, they always talk about just getting to the last couple of hours, and really up to then it's just clicking off laps and making sure you run mistake free, and that's a huge challenge in itself. And that's exactly what's the case here at the front. Certainly for Ross McFarlane and Josh Thompson, they've ran a perfect, flawless race so far. Kai Kashubi has not one slight blip cost him dearly, but my goodness me, has he driven so well ever since. As we have a car down pit lane, that is Aaron Rose is the first taker of the second stops, or certainly scheduled second stops. But yes, you're right, Paul, this only really when the leading trio leave pit lane for the final time are we going to know what we've got on our hands.
Aaron Rose, by the way, playing it canny through the hairpin on the inside of La Source in pit road, because it's so easy to end up in that concrete barrier that separates you from the live race track, and people have been known to roll their car on pit road here as well. So yeah, that was one of my teammates in an endurance race, so it's worth mentioning.
Name and shame.
It's also, I'm not going to name him because he knows who he is. It's also worth naming a different teammate who I brought in the car after doing my stint, handed it over, pit lane limiter was on, and he didn't have a pit lane limiter button mapped because he'd never had to have one mapped, and therefore he left pit road with the pit lane limiter on. I can tell you, 8 minutes 20 to go around this track on the pit lane limiter.
Oh no.
That was shown live on RaceSpotTV as well, so there was nowhere to hide from that one.
Oh, that is fantastic. That is absolutely fantastic. Well, I'm sure it wasn't fantastic at the time. I'm sure it was...
We were on for a podium. Both times we were on for a podium, and both times it got shown on RaceSpotTV, so...
Oh, I was...
Kai Kashubi's in.
Okay, first taker, Kai Kashubi. That's the agony and ecstasy of endurance racing. It is no more potent than in this form of motorsport, I think. Michael Evdoka in the pit lane as well. I tell you what, Paul, that phase there, pretty much from the spin to now, Kai Kashubi, that could be, I mean, that's the stint of the championship so far for me. That was a mega lap times going in there.
Absolutely, and also having to work his way through a field as well. You know, keeping those lap times up and working your way through is certainly a skill in itself, and he was showing his talent there. It was Aaron Rose, by the way, who had his pit stop. He was the first of the drivers with the shorter pit stop last time out. So yeah, Kai Kashubi and Michael Evdoka both jumping down on pit road because they were the next two who had taken that shorter pit stop last time out. So it's getting to that phase now. I said the last 10-15 minutes is where we see where we stand.
Kai Kashubi is no stranger to negotiating choppy waters, being a powerboat racer and all.
Well done, Peter.
Thank you. I had that written down for a while. Off he goes then. So, well, let's see what the pit stop time is then for Kai Kashubi.
About 22 seconds stopped in the stall.
Okay. In total, 21.8 in the stall. In the lane, 122 total. Okay.
So that's sort of a target, really, that Ross McFarlane and Josh Thompson can't afford to really go more than 3 seconds longer, can they? Because Kay was about 3 seconds behind them when he came onto pit road.
Exactly, yes, exactly 3 seconds, really, yes. So, and don't write off Jack Sedgwick. He's not a million miles away either. And the Ferrari, the number 10 Ferrari, it would require a heroic final portion of the race for Sedgwick, but don't write him off. And the thing is, if the leading trio get into a fight, Sedgwick will be able to close the gap quite quickly.
Exactly, yeah, so don't go anywhere. Josh Thompson pits, Ross McFarlane stays out. So Thompson deciding to pull the trigger now. Now, is he reacting to what Kai Kashubi has done? Get his pit stop done here, get himself maybe some clean air and trying to get some fast laps in over Ross McFarlane. I think Ross needs to come in this next lap.
Oh, we love it. This is what endurance racing's about, because, you know, all of the build-up, all of us talking about whether the Red Arrows are a combat unit or not, this is what it builds up to, because this is where, when you've got teams at this level, drivers at this level, who are so closely matched, they've had so much time on track, and it all comes down to that last dash to the flag. And because there's been so much invested in it, in time and laps, it makes it all the more sweet for the winner and all the more painful for the loser. So Josh Thompson into the stall.
1 minute 25 cone to cone is the absolute limit that Josh can have in his pit stop here. But even so, if Kai Kashubi has had a monster outlet, much quicker. Josh is much quicker. 13.8 seconds, well, just short of 14 seconds on the box. Oh, he's got a nice lead over Kai.
Yeah, so picking up 7 seconds in the lane over Kai Kashubi. I'm going to come across a little bit of traffic though. There is Josh Thompson, but
that's
we're not going to.
Harper. That's for position at the moment, although Harper is yet to have his pit stop.
That's right. So the traffic may not be there for much longer. In fact, the sea may part now for Josh Thompson. He's just got to be patient over this opening lap. But we're not going to know what the story is until Ross McFarlane, this man, the number 1 in the Lamborghini, the man from Edinburgh in Scotland, is with, of course, the full Lamborghini lights package, which is like Blackpool Illuminations or the Kennedy Space Station.
Staying out.
Oh, that's interesting. So was he playing Thompson? Was he thinking, yeah, you can sit there. I'm way within my speed.
What's his lap time? A 2:16.8. So it's still, you know, he's still in the fast lap time. Now he was doing 17s, wasn't he, with Josh?
Yeah,
so maybe he's just picked up the pace by a few tenths of a second.
Got clean road.
Yeah, he's got a little bit of traffic further up the road. So this is where now you've got to play it canny, haven't you? You've got to look at, okay, we've got to, if you've got a bunch of cars all together in front of you, that's a good time to pit, because it gets you out of being tripping up over those cars. Meanwhile, battle ongoing for Brian Lyons. Oh, late pit entry. Yeah, Brian Lyons pushing the pit entry there.
That's very risky because that's very easy to cause an incident. It's like the people who come from the outside lane of the motorway, see their sat-nav, they've got to come off the junction and think, oh well, maybe I could go to the next junction and turn around. No, I'll just carve right across the traffic and nearly cause a pile-up. So yeah, not wise to do that on a regular basis.
So Josh Thompson, I reckon, yeah, he's just about 1 minute 1 second behind Ross McFarlane.
Oh.
Now you do cut a little bit of the course, not just at La Source, but also through Rouge Radio with the pit exit. So that's going to be very tight. That is going to be extremely tight at the top there.
I think whatever fuel Josh Thompson was able to save, I think Ross McFarlane was saving it as well, close to saving it as well. But having those couple of hammer time laps, oh, I don't know. I really don't know. This is what makes endurance racing so exciting, and brilliant job from the World GT Championship organisers. They might not be very good with an alarm clock, but fantastic with setting up a really competitive championship. But you've just got that one. Thank you, Paul. Yeah,
I just twigged then. Yeah, did that one.
Yeah, I thought, oh God, I thought that was quite a good gag there. And anyway, that's the format to mandatory pit stop really does spice things up, and we really don't know until Ross McFarlane gasses that Lamborghini up the hill out of pit lane until we know who's played this one right.
As we keep on looking at this Morgan Butler Chris van der Ness battle on screen right now, in through Lafania. Matt Turnbull is the latest one to come onto pit road. Ross McFarlane has stayed out there once again, so I think he's going until he empties his fuel tank now, is Ross. He's going all the way to the end of his tank before he then gets onto pit road and does a splash and dash here. No tyres for him. Elliot Harper, who is in 10th place at the moment, is about the only driver who did take tyres.
Cool, yeah, so sorry, my apologies, that's the 64th Turnbull in. And McFarlane going around. Oh, Kai Kashubi all the way down. He's been shown as in 14th. I think there's a lot of people to pit in front of him.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, the timing screen has still got a big bunch of people who have yet to come onto pit road, and some are on pit road now. So Matt Turnbull, David Baker, Ben Gregory, Morgan Butler, all on pit road. Do you know what? It's rare that I go without talking about Ben Gregory in a race, because he's usually involved in some sort of shenanigans. Very quiet race for Ben out there today in 18th place right now.
Quiet races are good in endurance context, I would say. Just clicking off those lap times for Ben Gregory in the 1:13 Lamborghini for Three Spires Motorsport. Brilliant looking car that as well, with the Jericho paint scheme on it. So we're all waiting with bated breath and bad breath as well in my case, for Ross McFarlane to come into pit lane. Where is he? Here he is, and he comes into the timing beacon. Oh. Could you pop it into neutral going down the hill at the endurance pits?
You can. Just then you won't get the pit lane speed limiter, so you'd have to look at it manually. Well, there you see Jack Sedgwick is carrying on in the Ferrari, so that Ferrari's obviously been a bit frugal with its fuel, which is a very rare thing to say about a Ferrari, isn't it? It's usually the opposite for Ferraris, but yeah, very frugal is Jack Sedgwick with that. The person that we're keen on seeing is Josh Thompson, who's currently in 9th place, and to see where he is out there on track. He's coming around Blanchimont right now, heading into the bus stop chicane, and Ross he's at pretty much the end of the pit road after starting on the front row of the grid. Here we go, slowing down into a stall now. How long is that fuel going in? As Ashley Finch is the latest driver to come onto pit road, still waiting patiently. McFarlane Still holding there. And away. 15.8 seconds. Where's Josh Thompson? He's coming down the old pit straight. McFarlane's got to go up through Rouge Radio. Thompson's at pace. Could he catch him? I think McFarlane's just got enough of a lead. He does.
Well, you called him Mr. Endurance at the beginning of the broadcast, Paul, and Ross McFarlane in the number 1 Lamborghini has, well, for pure Sims, has lived up to that name. A little bit like how Tom Christensen lives up to the name Mr. Le Mans. Wow, brilliant stuff from Ross McFarlane, because to keep cool under pressure, Josh Thompson was playing it perfectly, sitting on the back bumper, trying to save fuel, almost putting a psychological pressure on McFarlane, but he's just unflappable at the wheel of that car.
And I could tell you
wow.
that Ross McFarlane was 2 seconds longer in the pit stall than Josh Thompson, so 2 seconds more fuel having to be put into that car. That just goes to show the difference of being the lead car and the car sat behind, as Jack Sedgwick has now come onto pit road. He's an outside shot, you mentioned it, Peter. He could be an outsider for definitely a podium, but possibly the top step as well.
Well, it's kind of like musical chairs here, because we've got 4 drivers in competition for the podium, and as we know, there's only 3 spots on the podium. So who's going to be left crying when the music stops? We'll see. But yeah, I actually think the key difference there was it shows you with losing 2 seconds in the stall, Ross McFarlane, those extra laps in clean air were vital, while Josh Thompson was snarled in traffic. So the traffic has not been kind to Josh Thompson, I don't think, in this race. But you're just talking such fine margins, and what's the gap now? It's about a second and a half, so it's far from done yet. But Ross McFarlane has played this absolutely perfectly, and to keep calm and to keep to a program with someone of Josh Thompson's caliber on your rear tail is just amazing. So McFarlane already at the top of Eau Rouge, Jack Sedgwick just coming out of pit lane, so maybe going to be a long shot for the win for Sedgwick, but how's it going to be for the podium? I think Sedgwick has come out in front of Kashubi. He has indeed. Now Kashubi, was worth pointing out, was only about 3 seconds behind Thompson before his pit stop. Because he had to take that longer pit stop, he's now the best part of 8 seconds behind Josh. So it's just that one mistake up at Le Combe has cost him a podium here. Cost him a chance for the win. That's for certain. Yeah, that's for absolutely certain. Kashubi would have been in there for challenging for the win, but he would have had to have delivered an equally flawless performance as Ross McFarlane and Josh Thompson have, and just the tiniest of errors cost dearly. And like we said, he did catch up, nearly caught up completely, but as we mentioned, he still had the invoice to pay. He had to use more fuel, and that's been the difference.
I can tell you, by the way, and I'm just seeing if he's still running. Yes, he's still running. There is one driver out there who has yet to accumulate an instant point in this race, as Jesse Jones and Oscar Copeland to RSR by G Performance team to mate onto pit road. So that will mean that Ross McFarlane will take the lead back after these pit stops. Yeah, there is one driver out there who has yet to accumulate an instant point, and I'm not going to say who that is, just in case somebody else happens to be listening to this broadcast and do something nefarious and get him an instant point. So we'll keep that to ourselves until the end of the race here. But Farland's not out of this yet. He's got Thompson about 2 seconds behind. He's got to keep pushing here as Ross at the front of your field as we look further back, and that is the 42 car, and that is Mike Horder, currently showing as 15th on the timing screen here, and he is not actually a Pro-Am leader. At the moment, that's Billy Fletcher who was as a pit stop. In fact, Billy Fletcher is the only driver yet to give us a final pit stop. That's a very frugal car that he's got there in the 388 in third place.
Indeed, yeah, very frugal indeed for Billy Fletcher. Like you mentioned earlier, Ferrari and frugal, not two words we find in the same sentence very, very often. I think Billy Fletcher's in a Porsche, is he? Or is it Lamborghini? I can't quite remember what car he opted for. So the gap then to Lamborghini. Well, there you go. That's another word you don't find in the word frugal and Lamborghini. Definitely don't go together very often. But the gap now 2.5 seconds between Ross McFarlane and Josh Thompson, with Sedgwick about 8 seconds back on the leader in third. But I suspect he might have a determined Kai Kashubi on the case very, very soon. So I think we could actually see two simultaneous showdowns, one for the win and one for the last spot on the podium.
Certainly could. Morgan Butler, by the way, is battling away with Ben Gregory and Tim Perry. And the three of them going into Eau Rouge, then Radion, uphill, carry so much speed through there. You said you almost point at the sky. Well, you won't see much if you point at the sky at the moment with it being that dark. And, well, Ben Gregory is helping his teammate along there, and Morgan Butler is just having to hang back and say, oh, okay, you got to play the team game. I can think about that, and just locked in behind Tim Perry now. So Ben Gregory and Tim Perry both for the the Three Spires Motorsport team.
I admire your bravery taking that team name on, Paul, because who's that off? Oh, big off at Jackie X corner. Oh,
believe
dear.
It might have been Christian Rose, because it was a Craig setup shop car, and it was a Porsche, and he's the only one of that team in the Porsche. So Christian Rose, that's the second time he's been off there at this race that we've seen. Not a fond of that corner, it appears.
No, well, Jackie X, of course, the name of that corner, winner of 6 Le Mans, quite a few of them with Porsche, and won the first race with the 956 for Rothman's Porsche in 1982. But catching out the Weissach brand there, as we've got a really fierce side-by-side battle here going into, now where are we now, in the dark, and Pouhon, side-by-side through Pouhon. Surely that never works.
Well, it's working so far, and they're gonna carry on. And Joel Evans in the 724 Vulcan Sim Racing nicely moved ahead of James Whitehouse in that Century Sim esports team.
Quite a vivid demonstration of just how flat the Lamborghini handles, and just how flat it corners, and how you can maintain the corner speed in that Lamborghini, and really went around the almost, in comparison, slightly cumbersome Mercedes. And brilliant move there from Joel Evans. Brave, it has to be said, but fortune favours the brave.
Now, here's a question for you. I'm looking at the leaders, by the way, as we'll have a look at Christian Rose. Jackie X, he's lost it going into the corner. Does well not to actually touch the wall. Oh, that's so close. The driver's from wide. And yeah, that's a very wise move that Christian's just made right there.
Almost sacrificing the rear of the car to get out of the way to save the front. Just thought I can have a little tap into the barrier just to make sure I'm well out of the way. Well, 9 minutes to go in what has been a really action-packed motor race here at Spa-Francorchamps. And really, Spa never disappoints. It's such a popular endurance racing venue, and you can see why.
I'm going to point this out. Josh Thompson, 0.8 of a second slower on his last lap compared to Ross McFarlane. Has he put enough fuel in his car?
Well,
is he having to do a little bit of fuel saving here?
I think maybe, of course, with 5 seconds back to Jack Sedgwick, I think Josh Thompson's maybe think, I'm just going to have to settle for second here. I'm sure that's a painful discussion for someone of his level with himself, but I think he's thinking, if you've got the 5 seconds in hand and you are at all concerned with the fuel, yes, I could see where fuel saving is coming into the number 49 Williams Esports car. And so for McFarlane, that'll make his run to the line a little bit more comfortable as well.
As Max Wolf gains a position through Curveball Freya actually there, which is not a usual overtaking spot if I'm honest. So again, Morgan Butler moving down the field, so is he having to fuel save as well in all of this? I mean, he only pitted 5 laps ago.
I guess that's the thing with Spa being such a long lap, that and we don't know exactly when the white flag is going to drop, and if you end up having, if it's a sort of 50-50 and you get sent round for one more lap, it's another, 7 kilometres, so
yeah.
Ooh, that's some fuel light gamble that will make some of us feel pretty nervous.
I mean, if you're a British father and going along the motorways, you can always make it to the next services.
Oh, sure, we're not paying that price for it.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. But it's risking an expensive toll to avoid paying £1.50 for a litre for petrol.
Absolutely. Chris Wood is under pressure at the moment. He lost a position to Elliot Harper. He's now got Billy Fletcher, Elliot's teammate, and that looks him outfit. And looking left and right is Elliot. He's trying to get into the mind of Chris Wood, who has had a couple of moments in that Porsche. Out of Pouon. And Harper, he's keen, isn't he? He's trying to show that nose, and Wood is a tough cookie to get past.
Tough cookie indeed, and Chris Wood has certainly had to work for this 12th place that he's got right now. He's had a few real moments, and the one thing you want out of an endurance racing car is it for it to be predictable and to let you away with things, and it looks like that team mad Porsche has been trying to rip his head off at every moment. It really has looked a handful, which is not, I have to say, when it has been a while with my should we say predicament with not having an active right foot at the moment. I've not been able to drive at the Simmerflay, which is really killing me, I'll be honest. But when this car first came out a few months ago, I actually thought it was a really nice stable package, but it appears to have grown a kind of nasty dual personality, Paul.
Yeah, it's worth pointing out, by the way, Chris Wood started 19th up to that position in 12th place. Billy Fletcher, though, going a little bit better. He started 50th on the grid, and he's up to 13th, and he's looking likely of possibly going into 12th here. Don't get too close through Radion, because you'll have to back out if nothing else. And there you go, there's the aero wash that you were talking about.
Yeah, huge. It really does make an effect, and I tell you what, it just shows you the level of sophistication that the iRacing.com simulator engineers are able to software engineers are able to integrate into this simulator, because that is exactly what would happen in a real world GT3 car. So you spoke to drivers who race these things in the real world, and that is exactly what they say. It does have a bit of aero wash, and it really it boggles my mind the level of detail that the iRacing simulator goes to. So if you've never tried, if you're watching it, you've never tried it, and you're thinking, oh, will I, won't I? Go for it, join up. It is just fantastic to get so close to the real thing, or to, well, I wouldn't even say the real thing. This is the real thing, it's just in a virtual form. You're still doing the same movements with your hands and your feet.
And I will say as well, it's worth pointing out there is actually currently a 40% offer for all members. So do get yourself over to iRacing.com for further details.
But only Paul, though, once you've got yourself, before you do that, make sure that you've got your 20% off on your free sim racing gloves. You've got the gloves ready to get into iRacing.
Well, we did say last time out that it was while stocks last. We don't know if we've got any stocks left of those gloves, because it was such a good offer. So you go and find that out. We've got 4 minutes remaining of this race, and Kei Kashube is right up to the tail of Jack Sedgwick right now. So this is the battle for the final step of the podium here in this race. Sedgwick and Kashube, they're no strangers to each other either. They've duked it out in World Championship Series many a time, and here we're seeing two high caliber esports drivers being able to compete in the World GT Championship. And I'm not saying that as a derogatory towards any of the other drivers, because they're all put on a tremendous performance out there. Just quickly go through your top three is Ross McFarlane, Josh Thompson with Jack Sedgwick, and Kashube you see right behind in 4th place. Your top Pro-Am driver, Elliot Harper, up to 11th place with Billy Fletcher, your 2nd place Pro-Am. The two teammates from Luxim 24, they're in 11th and 12th place overall. Mike Horder, 14th overall. He's your 3rd place Pro-Am driver. And your top Am driver at the moment is actually Paul Webster in this immortal Porsche. He's in 24th place with Andy Archer, 2nd place in class in 26th, and James Whitehouse 3rd in class in 28th. So that's how the 3 different classes of drivers stand at the moment. And we've got battling going on. Ben Gregory and Max Wolf now battling it out for 19th and 20th place as that battle for 3rd place goes on as well, Peter.
And I tell, for anyone nervous on fuel, got very bad news. The leaders have just gone over the start-finish line with when they come back around, there'll be about 15 seconds left on the clock, but of course they won't quite have reached the end of the lap. Therefore, we'll have to go around for a whole extra lap, so it's about as long as the race could theoretically be.
Kashube's ahead of Sedgwick. He's made the move.
Good spot, sorry.
And he, in that BMW, in theory, should be able to pull away. But Sedgwick, of course, will have the slipstream here up the Kemmel Straight, so don't write that Ferrari off. Meanwhile, on the left-hand side of your screen, Max Wolf battling it out with Ben Gregory through Lafania. A little bit of a slide from Wolf in that Porsche. Kashube able to hold on to 3rd place ahead of Sedgwick. Sedgwick really, he needs to nail this middle sector to keep with Kashube in towards Blanchimont.
Oh, brilliant motor racing from both Kai Kashube and Jack Sedgwick. Jack Sedgwick threw everything at that to try and make a kind of retaliation move to try and strike back, but Kashube covered it off beautifully, but it's not done yet.
There's a little bit of a shoulder barge from Max Wolf on Ben Gregory on the left-hand side through Blanchimont. Gregory didn't take kind to that and flashed the headlights, but Gregory's now in a good spot to get the slipstream on Wolf. So, yeah, don't write off this race. There's multiple battles out there. I did see on the timing tower on the left-hand side as well that Matt Turnbull has moved ahead of Jesse Jones up into 5th place in this race. So, movement on this last lap. This is great to see here. Well, it's not even the last lap. The leader's yet to reach the last lap here. As you mentioned, Peter, Ross McFarlane's just heading through Blanchimont now, so we are going to get that fabled extra lap here.
Oh, if you're nervous about fuel, that is the last thing that you need. And of course, if you can see the leader, if you know roughly where the leader is, that's fine. But a lot of the other drivers will kind of be in the dark about that. So, it's really, really tough. As this battle between Max Wolf and he is really pushing on in that Porsche, and yeah, shoulder hip check through Blanchimont normally ends very badly.
As Ross McFarlane starts his final lap, so we've got about 2 minutes or so extra of racing going on here. Max Wolf is actually pulling away slightly from Ben Gregory. Gregory tried to make the move around the outside line, and it didn't quite pan out for him. Now here's Kei Kashube. Has he got a big enough lead of Jack Sedgwick to hold on to 3rd place up the Kemmel Straight? He might have to try and break the slipstream. Here's Sedgwick. He is gaining, but not enough. He's not going to catch enough into Les Combes. Kei Kashube, he'll be feeling a little bit more confident now about holding on to that 3rd place.
I tell you what, Kai Kashube had the BMW absolutely on its toes going through Eau Rouge and Radion, the car looking very, very lively. But remember, of course, they're on tyres that are an hour and 40 minutes old, so the tyres have been put through their paces. There'll be nothing left in either of those cars, and it's down to the driver to make the most out of it on these final laps. But it seems like Kai Kashube just have the edge for now, but it would take just one slight mistake would make the difference. But Ross McFarlane has an advantage of 6.5 seconds, so Josh Thompson has backed right off in these last couple of laps, and looks like the number one, the defending champion, Ross McFarlane, the Scotsman, He's going to take victory here, and an emphatic one at that.
It certainly is a tremendous performance from the Scotsman, and he's living up to the moniker that I put on him there. No pressure at all. Yeah, get the shirts printed, absolutely, and the caps.
Get the 3M gloves, Mr. Endurance gloves by 3M.
Well, here he is then, in towards the bus stop chicane for the final time. Right, left, comes out of that chicane, and he will flash the headlights. He is delighted because he is a race winner here in the World GT Championship.
What a super drive. Super drive there from Ross McFarlane. And Josh Thompson, after a disastrous meeting at the Red Bull Ring, what a way to steady the ship in second.
And as the fireworks go off to celebrate, we can look back because Elliot Harper is the leader of your Pro-Am category. He's got a nice little gap over his next competitor. Elliot Harper's in 11th place. There he is on screen, car 29, and looks him 24. There's a car slow.
Is that Shubey?
No, it's not. Shubey has made it across the line. That's okay. Don't make me panic like that.
It's a black BMW.
Well,
is it an unmarked police car?
What we can say is Elliot Harper's just got 2 corners to go, and he will have himself a Pro-Am win across the line. Nicely done for the Luxem 24 car, and his teammate Billy Fletcher, I say driver of the day, Billy Fletcher, 50th up to 12th place for him. And we look further back because Paul Webster in the Immortal Porsche is in 23rd place right now. There he is on screen, and he is your AM leader heading through towards Blanchimont with, again, another driver we've barely talked about all race here, and that's a good thing in this case.
Yeah, when you're leading a race and you don't get any airtime, that means you're doing the perfect job, and Paul Webster's certainly done that, and he's tamed the Porsche.
Seems to be the only one from Team Mad who's managed to do that, and across the line he takes victory in AM. Here does Paul Webster. Last of your somebody's actually run out of fuel there. I think that's Ryan Hamilton. It is for Nomad Sim Racing. Well, if you're going to run out of fuel at the finish line.
Yeah, just shed a few positions at the end there. That's really, really unlucky, but has made it over the line just and no more, rolling into the petrol station there.
Absolutely.
I've done that before, clutch in on the way down.
Well, he's timed it absolutely spot on, but that is everybody finished in this race here, so we will be able to give you your official results here, and it is Ross McFarlane then for Pure Sims Esports who wins this race by 9.8 seconds. Now, here's a question. Why has Josh Thompson fallen all the way down to 8th place? Well, possibly a penalty on the last lap could be a case as well. We'll get to that in a moment. Keg Shubey, 2nd place then, 9.8 seconds behind, just ahead of Jack Sedgwick in 3rd place. That's BS Competition, and then the 3M by Williams in XBS in 3rd place. Pure Sims Esports Matt Turnbull then gets classified in 4th place ahead of the 2 RSR by G Performance drivers of Jesse Jones and Oscar Copa. Michael Avdoka for Pure Sim SimLab in 7th place, and then there you go, Josh Thompson, the man who we thought was 2nd place, must have got a penalty right at the end of play there as he crossed the line, so that's down to 8th place for him. Aaron Rose for Luxem 24 Esports in 9th, and David Baker for Craig Setup Shop rounding out the top 10. 11th down then for Elliot Harper and Billy Fletcher, your top Pro-Ams for Luxem 24 Esports. They will be delighted with that result. Chris Wood for Team Mad in 13th ahead of Mike Horder from Brewstead Farage. Then the Brewstead Parental Guidance, Alex Nella 15th, and Sim Stickers, Brian Loyens in 16th place. The 2 Evo SR cars of Chris Van Den Ness and Max Wolf 17th and 18th place. And then it's 2x2. It's almost like Noah's Ark because Ben Gregory and Tim Perry for 3 Spires Motorsport round out the top 20. Morgan Butler, 21st for the Pure Sims plus Craig Setup Shop outfit, and then Lars Van Rijn for Boosted Motorsport. Paul Webster is your top amateur driver for Simmortal, ahead of Ashler Finch for Pure Sim SimLab, who had to pit right at the end of the race. Andy Archer is your second placed AM driver for Century Sim Esports. Sim Stickers Ross Nicholson, 26th ahead of the first driver 1 lap down of Joel Evans for Vulcan Sim Racing. James Whitehouse for Century Sim Esports and Tom Stevens Evo SR, with Century Sim Esports Tony Draper rounding out 30th place. John Roberts for Boosted Virage finishes in 31st place, and I can tell you with John Roberts, he was the driver who was actually on 0 incidents in that race, and I can tell you he did finish on 0 incidents for that race. Simmortal's Matt Woodhouse in 32nd ahead of the Pure Sims Craig Setup Shop car of Christian Rose. Chris Byron for Cuda E-Motorsport in 34th, and Toby Ward for 3 Spires Motorsport, who had that incident up at Les Cornes on lap number 1. Ryan Hamilton for Nomad Sim Racing crawling across the line there at the end, 1 lap down. And Simon Field, another driver who had issues on the opening laps for Boosted Motorsport, 1 lap down. Lee Berridge 3 laps down, and the rest of the drivers did not finish here. Adam Hedgecock for Boosted Virage and Simon Underhill for Nomad Sim Racing. Jonathan Walker for the 3M outfit in 41st. Year 1 Racing's Nicholas Salapoutis, RSR by G Performance, Kenneth Gould-Branson, Elias Sepinen, what a heartbreak for him in the BS competition car. Adam Gladden for Vulcan Sim Racing, Bradley Hulse for Year 1 Racing, JB Masida for Team Mad, Michael Blake for Simmortal, Pete Harrod for Pure Sims SimLab outfit, and Simon Neller 50th place, 44 laps down for Boosted Parental Guidance. So 3 drivers who did not take the start: Ashley Sutton, the dozy Matt Bunn, and Nathan Lewis. Well, what a drive and what a performance by that driver right there. Ross McFarlane, once again, Season 9 champion, and the endurance races had a big part to play in all of that, Peter.
Well, is it history repeating itself? Certainly so far. 2 endurance wins from 2, 1 at Silverstone, 1 at Spa, 2 Grand Prix staples, shall we say. But next endurance round, and I know, Paul, that your wicked sense of humour is looking. We can't wait till we go to the streets of Detroit. Now, IMSA do make an annual visit there. We have seen the American Le Mans Series there as well. So has been some endurance racing there as well. But to keep it out the walls on the streets of Detroit next time, well, if there's anyone who's going to do it, it's got to be Ross McFarlane, because under the pressure today, that middle stint with Josh Thompson sitting on his bumper, and Ross would have known what he was doing, but he knew exactly the lap time to hit, exactly the fuel number to hit, and he just did it time and time again. Easy for us to talk about, almost impossible to do.
Hopefully we won't be doing that one at night. That would be an extra challenge for those drivers if they did have to do that at night. Tremendous performance from Ross. Josh Thompson. Now I'm just having a look at my my sheet here. He ended up with 34 incident points. Now the instant count penalties were every 24. So did he have a penalty and not serve it within the last 3 laps or so to give himself a big penalty? That would be the only explanation I have, really, as to why he dropped down to 8th place.
Now, it's only speculation. Do you think that he didn't serve it on purpose because it's better not to serve it and get the time penalty than do the drive-through at the endurance pits at Spa?
Possibly. I mean, he did end up finishing, it was about, just looking at the results, 41.9 seconds behind at the end there. Well, you're talking with a pit stop, you're talking about a minute just to negotiate the pit lane without the pit stop. So maybe that's a 200 IQ move right there from Josh Thompson.
That could well be it, yeah, because if you don't serve it and you get a 30-second penalty, that's a lot better than going through pit lane. We've maybe just found an iRacing loophole, Paul, possibly, or Josh Thompson has, to be fair.
It's not like sim racers to find loopholes in rules, is it? So So yeah, he's just explained in our chat that yes, that's what he chose to do. He took the flag and took the time penalty instead of pit lane. Oh, that's
the
where
unfair advantage.
The old
up here for
knocking.
thinking, down there for dancing.
Absolutely. I will say my personal driver of the day though, Billy Fletcher, second in Pro-Am in 12th place from starting 50th on the grid though. That is an unbelievable performance out there.
Absolutely exceptional stuff from Billy Fletcher, you have to say, really. I mean, to make up that number of positions, not make any mistakes, get the strategy right, I'm sure his race went absolutely perfectly to plan. You couldn't have afforded any slip up to make that level of improvement. And funnily enough, we talk about Ash Sutton, Mr. Pure Sims himself. Normally that's the sort of thing he would do, the kind of charge through the field, and I thought that was maybe what we were going to get when we saw him not make a qualifying time and start at the back, but didn't take the start. So brilliant stuff for Billy Fletcher, and that of course will put him, he was in the top 5 in the Endurance Cup standings when we started this race, and that'll certainly keep him. We're going to have, I think, a real battle for Endurance Cup standings as we go through the season.
Well, if you think the calculation, half a point for every position you gain, that is a lot of points that he's just gained there. He's
the rink and brink of the NLS BMW 3 Series of rink and brink. Billy Fletcher is our own rink and brink.
And it's worth pointing out as well, Paul Webster, quiet race. We didn't talk about him all race at all. Comes through, wins the AM. That's a tremendous performance from him, just to keep it clean, keep it between the white lines and get to the end, which so many Porsches didn't do here today.
No, that car was really proving to be quite a handful for many drivers in many teams as well. It wasn't just one particular team struggling, and and in the AM class, that is obviously the class where you're going to see drivers making the most mistakes, so keeping away from that is tough. There'll have been cars spearing off all around them, and just to keep calm and click off those laps, not easy at all. And like you say, it's almost as if to not get airtime and win an endurance race means you've done it perfectly.
Absolutely. I don't know if we can bring up the calendar, because you did mention it. We've got a week off next week. There you go. So we're not going to be on broadcast next week. We're actually going to be on in 2 weeks' time. Belle Isle is going to be the next one. Detroit, the streets of Belle Isle. That's going to be a test of the driver's patience, I think, next time out. That is going to be absolutely a tremendous one. And then we're into that second half of the season. Brands Hatch, Motegi, then Suzuka for an endurance race. That's going to be a really, really good race. I've a funny feeling about that. Sebring and then Monza to finish off for the championship. But first half of the championship gone here, Peter. What's been your takeaway in your first season of covering this championship?
Well, my takeaway has been how lucky I am to be involved, because the racing has been absolutely superb, up and down the field. Brilliant to see so many cars, and also brilliant to see the consistency in participation as well. I think that proves that the championship is loved by the drivers as well as those watching, and because sometimes you could see a big grid at the start and then it really fades off quite quickly as people decide to go do other stuff. But I think it says a lot about the World GT Championship how many stay in the game and see the whole season out, to for lack of a better word. But it's been superb. It's been great to call it here on RaceSpotTV, and like you say, only halfway point, and impossible to call that championship, especially with Phil Denny's not coming tonight. And Josh, well, of course, Josh really could have done with that second place finish. That maybe does drop him a wee bit further back. I don't know. We don't know.
We'll have to wait and see how it all pans out. We find out who wins the championship at the last round of the championship, because no drop score comes into effect for that last round. So it is winner take all at the end of the championship. But I'm afraid that is all we've got time for you here today. So from Peter Mackay and from myself, Paul Smith, and Hugo Luis behind the scenes on the cameras and graphics, we will bid you farewell and see you in 2 weeks' time. Same place, same channel, same time. It's the World GT Championship brought to you by 3M here on RaceSpotTV. Goodbye.